And we joined Dr. Tim McKnight this morning. Good morning. Good to see you.
Good morning.
I was going to send you a message on social media, but I thought that might be dangerous today with our topic, social media and mental health, because it's really a two-way street, isn't it, with the social media? So many different options now.
I think it's a double-edged sword. I guess I wanted to preface any comments about mental health as something I think we all probably experience some form of a mental health disorder, or we sort of tiptoe into it, and some of us come out and some go in real deep. So I can identify with anxiety and panic disorder and even depression. I've felt a little bit of each of those at different times in my life and have been able to step back and not have to be treated for it, but some people need to be treated. Mm-hmm. I can say, though, in about 30 years of experience with patients, that most people with depression, it's not the chemical switch where the lights go out. That is a depression that you have to use medication for, because there's no other way to pull somebody out. And the hope is that we can use it short term until they start feeling better, and then they can take a step back and maybe get some counseling and work through it. But that's a chemical switch in the brain, and that's different. That always needs treated. I think in terms of anxiety, which I think social media can precipitate that, those are just, most of the time, they're unfulfilled expectations. And they're stories we write about situations or our lives, because this and this didn't happen, now this is going to happen, and now I'm worried and I can't get out of that loop. Sometimes that needs to be treated, but most of the time, that's also take a step back, get to the root cause of what's ailing you, what your anxieties are, and find a healthy way to deal with it. A friend, a coach, a counselor, whatever it takes to get through that. But I think in terms of social media, there are we were talking about it before we came on the air. There's definitely good that comes from social media. It can be used for good, right? You were talking about connecting with friends. Mm-hmm. I was out of town last weekend, and I was trying to contact somebody that that was important in my life 50 years ago, and there was no phone book to look this person up in the city, right? You don't see phone books anymore. And so I went to social media, and unfortunately I couldn't find him. But it does serve a good purpose. And a lot of us like to share, events in our lives on social media. But I see this a lot in the office, that you get stuck on social media. It can be very habitual. And two things that come of it that I think are detrimental. One is that we think our lives don't measure up to everybody else. Everybody else is happier or has better vacations or a better family, and those are illusions, right? I mean, we always show our best face most of the time when
I was going to say, who posts their bad Thanksgiving dinner on social media? Nobody.
Yeah. And I've been tempted. I haven't had the courage to do this, but some morning when you first get out of bed and you got bed hair, and you look tired and awful, your worst look, like let's post that. That's me this morning.
I will look for that now.
I'm not psychologically strong enough to do that yet, but I've thought about that. And then the other thing that I think we need to realize with social media is that unless we put some type of a limit on the time we spend, it's a mindless activity that distracts us from more important things. And I always think of the 4 quadrants of that Stephen R. Covey used to promote or talk about. And quadrant 2 is important and not urgent. Those are the things that we do that help us to grow as people. But the unimportant and non-urgent are the social media, flipping through Instagram or Facebook. And before you know it, 5 minutes turns into 30 minutes, and you've missed out on quadrant 2 activities that really make a difference in your life. So those are the first thoughts I have about mental health and social media. We have to be really careful. And again, when I see anxiety, sometimes we have to treat it, but a lot of times it's just a story we're writing, and we're comparing ourselves to somebody else, and because they have this and this and this, my life isn't good enough, and why am I stuck here, and this is awful. And what happens with anxiety and sometimes with depression is the focus, instead of outward towards other people and how do you help other people, it turns inwards, and you're listing all of your flaws and weaknesses and all the bad things in your life. And I don't think you ever find happiness in that place. It's got to come from helping other people and getting outside yourself. But anxiety and depression often is an inward turn on your problems and situations.
Here's another, you talked about Dr. Covey, and we bought into that when I was a teacher at Canton Valley.
Right.
And, talking to the students, which was part of my curriculum, was FOMO.
Yes.
And that's another thing, the dopamine shot, and then the fear of missing out.
Right.
Like you've got to keep going back because something big might happen, and you got to be there.
Yeah, exactly. I definitely I see that, and I've also kind of been a victim of that. And so I think, like I said, I think there are ways that you can put little timers on social media that says, okay, this is your limit for the day. You said 30 minutes, and you've reached that, and that can be a reminder for some of us. But social media is, in a way, I don't know how to say this delicately. In a way, it's a form of pornography because it's an illusion that most of the time doesn't exist, right? And I think that's where we have to be careful because we just compare ourselves too much. And my mom used to say, "You're never going to feel good comparing yourself to other people," and that's so true. But we get caught in that trap sometimes, and we feel like our life isn't what it's supposed to be. So my remedy for most anxiety and most depression is doing quadrant 2 activities, things that help you progress as a person, studying, learning a language, or developing a skill, or spending time in the gym, or those things that you can always put off for another day, but if you do them consistently, it'll change your life. And then I think the next key is to focus on other people, help other people. To me, that is so healing because everybody wins. You feel better. You're making their life better. The focus isn't inward on your problems. It's how can I lift or help somebody else? And I know that's simple. And I realize that some people come with anxiety with baggage or with trauma in their life, and sometimes those traumas are really difficult to overcome. It requires a lot of counseling, a lot of self-introspection, and a lot of honesty with yourself, and it's a lot of work, but that's where you need counseling. And I'm not convinced that medication is the treatment every time, because a lot of times the antidepressants and anti-anxieties, they take away those lows, but they kind of compress the highs. So now you're living in this sort of this numb zone where you're not laughing, but you're not crying. And it's almost like a mild form of a zombie kind of an existence. And that's not what we want either. But I certainly feel for the people that struggle with this, because some people really struggle with anxiety and depression. I think they need treated, but I always want to try to help them move out of that, move past that. And it requires quadrant 2 activities and doing things for other people. I just don't know any other way.
Getting away from the social media, you mentioned limiting time, but if you were ill and found you were eating poison mushrooms, you would stop eating the poison mushrooms. So you have to realize that this is what is feeding into your anxiety.
Right. And I think, yes, exactly. And I think when we're posting on social media, we have an opportunity to post positive healing messages, maybe not necessarily about ourselves, but just positive messages, because people appreciate that. I think on social media, people are looking for those kind of things, right? Just things that make you feel good, make you feel upbeat, optimistic. And definitely, as you talked, we can connect with people and we can communicate with people we otherwise couldn't find. I think there's good in that. I just think we have to put limits on it and be really careful. And how much you limit that is up to each person. But I would my caution is be careful and spend time developing yourself and not comparing yourself. And because, like I said, everybody knows this. Time can go really fast on social media, and so it's, you think back 30 years ago when we didn't have this, what did we do? How did we fill up the time?
Well, I saw something on social media today. It was kind of funny, but a kid was sitting in front of a cereal box reading the cereal box, and I was like, yes, something like that.
Yeah. Phone booths and letters. I mean, those were the way we used to communicate, and the phones that hung on the wall, and long distance calls were not something we did often.
No,
it's a different world.
Nighttime, better rates.
That's right. Yeah.
Well, thank you. But if you feel you need help, you should seek a professional to get some advice.
Oh, absolutely. I think we never want people to suffer, and we don't want them to get to the point of suicide or totally withdrawn. It's a very dark place to be. But what invites light? Giving light invites light. It brings us out of the darkness, doing things for other people. Great remedy.
All right, Dr. McKnight, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And are there any spots left in Fit for Life?
There are spots virtually. We've got 50 in the live class, but if people want to join and they want to just watch virtually and we don't have room in the library for them, but they could certainly still join.
Okay, great. So that is available as well, and that is today. Talk with the Doc.